Hi, I'm Pommy! Do you want to experience the joy of a carefree pup? Coloring can bring you that happiness. Grab this delightful coloring book, Animals and Sugar Skulls. It's cute and fun. Don't hesitate, get yours today.
Hi everybody. Thanks for joining me on this video. So today I'm going to be painting Mothman while I talk about Mothman and supposed sightings of Mothman. So for this painting, I'm painting a program called Vermilion, and it's really cool. This image that I'm looking at, it's the reference image, and I used AI to make it. I'm not going to paint exactly the same image, but it's just a reference. So first we'll talk about who or what Mothman is. So Mothman is a winged humanoid cryptid that was sighted in the Point Pleasant area of West Virginia, USA, from November 1966 to December 1967. It gained widespread attention due to a series of reported sightings by numerous witnesses during this time. The Mothman is described as a large winged humanoid with glowing red eyes and a wingspan of around 10 feet or more. So the most famous sighting occurred on November 15th, 1966. Two young couples, Roger and Linda Scarberry, and Steve and Mary Mollett, claimed to have encountered the creature near the abandoned TNT area known as the munitions plant. So it was a munitions plant, but I think that the nickname was the TNT area. But anyway, they described it as a large creature with glowing red eyes that followed their car as they drove away. So after this initial encounter, reports of Mothman started coming in. When you look up Mothman, this is the start of it. But there is another story of grave diggers that see a humanoid winged creature fly overhead while they're digging graves late at night. So anyway, reports of the Mothman continued over the next year, with various witnesses claiming to have seen the creature in different locations around Point Pleasant. Many of these witnesses also reported experiencing feelings of intense fear or a sense of impending doom when encountering the Mothman. In addition to the sightings, there were also strange occurrences reported in the Point Pleasant area during this time period, including electrical disturbances, mysterious phone calls, and sightings of strange creatures. Mothman also gained further attention after John Keel's book The Mothman Prophecies in 1975, which explored the sightings and associated phenomenon in detail. The book was later adapted into a film of the same name in 2002, and that was a really good movie, Mothman Prophecies. So another strange thing that happened was this creature or person called Indrid Cold. He's also known as the Grinning Man, and he gained notoriety during the same time Mothman did, the same time the Mothman sightings occurred. So since it's an interesting thing, I'm gonna talk about him a little bit too. So Woodrow Derenberger's encounter was, I guess, the first person who saw Indrid Cold or the Grinning Man on November 2nd, 1966. He was a sewing machine salesman, and he had this bizarre experience while driving along Interstate 77 near Parkersburg, West Virginia. He noticed a set of headlights approaching him, which then slowed down and stopped in front of his vehicle. So what he thought were headlights of a car weren't a car, it was some sort of UFO, and a man stepped out. He describes the man as an average appearance with dark, swept-back hair and an unusually deep tan for that time of year. the most striking feature was the man's extraordinary broad grin. He also wore a dark overcoat and a metallic-looking green uniform that glistened in the light. He introduced himself as Indrid Cold and claimed to be from the planet called Lanulos. I'm going to say it's Lanulos. Cold engaged in conversation with Derenberger, discussing various topics related to space travel and humanity. Derenberger also reported several more interactions with Cold, who allegedly visited him and communicated telepathically. So some people think there's a connection to Indrid Cold and Mothman because they happened around the same time. Thinking maybe they're connected, maybe they're extraterrestrial or interdimensional beings that came through at the same time or something like that. Okay, so I'm going to read some Mothman encounters. Now these are from all different years, and not exactly all Point Pleasant. Mothman has been sighted in other places as well. So the first story, or sighting, was in 1975. A woman named Lisa from West Virginia was with a small group of friends, gathered around a fire near a canal. Across the canal was a densely wooded area, filled with the sounds of crickets and cicadas. Abruptly, all sound ceased, and they all heard movement from the woods on the opposite bank. She says it was approximately 85 to 200 feet away, and they see a figure emerging that they described as humanoid with striking red eyes and what appeared to be wings, standing at an estimated height of 6.5 to 7 feet. The sight filled them with terror, prompting them to flee. They went and got shotguns, but when they returned, the entity had vanished, and the woods had returned to their normal ambience. So they ran to get shotguns to shoot Mothman. I don't blame them, I'd be afraid too if I saw something like that. She says the encounter left a lasting impression of fear. When she recounted the experience to her parents, they likened the creature to what is now known as the Mothman. The appearance resembled moth-like fur or skin, rigid and unsettling, and she described it as having the most striking feature being its crimson eyes. After learning about Richard Gere's film The Mothman Prophecies later on, Lisa heard similar accounts for the first time. Television programs like The Unexplained reinforced these sightings. So she thinks it was Mothman, according to the movie that she saw later on, remembering her sighting in 1975. So maybe it was Mothman. This other story is from Chicago, Illinois. A man named Jim was in his backyard, busying himself with preparations for a family cookout alongside his daughter, when their attention was abruptly captured by an unexpected sight. Above them, 3 objects resembling human figures with wings were seen circling in the sky, roughly 60 to 70 feet overhead. Heading towards the nearby expressway to the west, seizing the opportunity, his daughter attempted to capture the spectacle on her camera, though the resulting footage proved to be grainy and out of focus. As they watched the mysterious aerial display unfold, conversation turned to the recent buzz surrounding Mothman sightings near O'Hare Airport, which lay just about 1.5 miles away down Irving Park Road. So it seemed plausible to them that what they were witnessing could be connected to those reports. They remained fixated on the flying entities until they vanished from sight. So Jim believes that these objects were not airplanes. He said there were no planes in the vicinity at the time. Being familiar with the routine sights and sounds of planes landing due to their proximity to the airport, he noted that these flying entities were too high up and not shaped right to be mistaken for conventional aircraft. He said that the objects vaguely resembled human forms, with what appeared to be wings. He acknowledged that it could possibly be birds, but he said they would have to be unusually large to fit the observed characteristics. So there was a lot of sightings by O'Hare Airport. Now the thing is, there's planes going by all the time, so maybe they're seeing planes, but a plane doesn't look like Mothman. So I don't know about that. Maybe it was birds. Just really big birds. Who knows? So the next story. On November 26th, 2019, Tom was driving his best friend from Washington, D.C. to Louisville, Kentucky. Just as they passed the Welcome to Kentucky sign, darkness enveloped the road. Then, they saw what they describe as a blend of a Pac-Man ghost for its head, and eyes glowing white and moving like a squid or jellyfish in water. No legs and huge, it stretched at least 6 feet, but when it spread its wings, it seemed gigantic. It was hovering around 20 feet above their car. Initially, the man was miffed, thinking someone had chucked trash out of their window. That is until it unfolded its wings and hovered, changing direction. They both let out a resounding WTF. He says how his legs and hands trembled for hours. At the toll booth, he asked the attendant if he'd ever spotted anything flying in the sky, and the man told tales of Mothman. The two friends had never heard of Mothman before. Tom believes it was watching over them, preventing a potential car accident. He stayed wide awake and extra cautious as he continued towards his hometown to visit family. He's still a bit shaken. He firmly believes Mothman isn't malevolent or monstrous, unless you are. They didn't catch a glimpse of red eyes, but they definitely witnessed something otherworldly. They believe they saw Mothman, and they believe it's real. Tom says he'll never forget it, and it was definitely no crane. So that's a strange one because of the Pac-Man shaped head. And the eyes were not red as usual, they were glowing white. But maybe there's different looking Mothman, different eye colors. Who knows? So this is Megan's encounter. This happened in Chicago. She firmly believes that this particular entity roosts in Bruce Woods. Or Boosie Woods? Located in the western suburbs near the Rolling Meadows area, Megan resides in a neighborhood suburb. The encounter took place right at the beginning of the pandemic, in early 2020. With many establishments closed, the night was unusually dark and silent, devoid of the usual urban glow. Around 2 a.m., Megan was in her garage tinkering with one of her bikes while listening to music, but not at a high volume. Suddenly, there was a crash on the roof of her garage. Although Megan had encountered raccoons leaping off trees onto the roof before, this impact felt distinctly human-sized, shaking the entire structure. Despite her initial assumption of a raccoon, Megan sensed something was amiss. Arming herself with a shovel, Megan ventured outside, attempting to peer into the darkness. However, visibility was almost non-existent. As she rounded the corner of her garage, onto the front yard. Shrouded in darkness, Megan heard a distinct landing roughly 15 yards ahead. Despite the absence of visible or audible threats, Megan felt a visceral sense of confrontation. So, gripping the shovel, Megan cautiously advanced, prompting 3 heavy footfalls and subsequent rattling of the fence behind her garage. A whooshing sound resembling the beating of wings followed, but Megan never caught a glimpse of the entity. Megan stresses that she was entirely sober, without the influence of drugs or alcohol, and well rested after finishing work only an hour and a half earlier. She believes her garage was likely the only source of light for miles, attracting the unknown entity. In the aftermath, shaken but unharmed, Megan retreated indoors, reflecting on the surreal encounter. She remains convinced that what she encountered was the Mothman, based on her subsequent research and sense of the creature's presence in Boosie Woods. This account, Megan emphasizes, is a factual retelling of a singular and unexplainable event in her life. So Megan didn't see anything, but she believes that this thing was Mothman. She could sense the size of it and hear the flapping of the giant wings. So this is an encounter shared by Mary. Her and her friend witnessed this in August 2010. So her and her friend Kira were on a business trip from Columbus, Ohio to Ravenswood, West Virginia. During their visit, Mary decided to take a detour to Ohio to visit relatives she hadn't seen in a while. After completing their business meeting, they headed south along Ohio Route 7, following the Ohio River towards Galapagos. Following a brief visit with Mary's relatives, they checked into a hotel near the local airport around 6 p.m. Around 7 p.m., they decided to grab dinner and found a quiet restaurant to eat and work. After finishing their meal, Kira needed to pick up a few forgotten items from a nearby Walmart. As they were walking to the car after shopping, Mary noticed a woman running through the parking lot. The woman quickly got into her car after glancing back towards the store. Mary looked in the same direction and saw what appeared to be a large bird flying above the store roof. Gleaming under the parking lot lights, its wingspan seemed wide, estimated to be around 8 to 10 feet. Though they were initially surprised, they dismissed it as a large bird due to the darkness. Returning to the hotel, they decided to call it a night to get an early start the next morning. Mary intended to watch television before bed, but she soon fell asleep. Later that night, Mary was awakened by frantic knocking on her door. It was Kira, visibly upset, claiming that it's here. Kira explained that she heard scratching sounds in the hallway and later outside her window. Upon investigation, she saw a creature with large bulging red eyes and wings outside her window before it disappeared into the night. Though skeptical, Mary allowed Kira to stay in her room. The next morning, they left early and drove back to Columbus without discussing the incident. However, Mary became curious, leading her to research the Mothman phenomenon associated with Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Mary wonders if their encounter could indeed be linked to the Mothman. Considering Kira's subsequent string of bad luck and tragedies, she seeks insight into whether this encounter could have any connection to the prophecies associated with the Mothman. That's pretty creepy. This next encounter is by Rob. He recounts a chilling experience that he had buried in his memory for over 30 years, only resurfacing after watching a television program about Mothman sightings. The incident took place in June 1975. On a mountain in Wisconsin. As Bob walked along the railroad tracks near the Mississippi River at dusk, he heard peculiar flapping noises emanating from the mountain. Curiosity led him to investigate. Despite the encroaching darkness, after a challenging ascent, he reached a clearing at the mountain summit, illuminated by the rising full moon. In the clearing, Rob encountered a large nest with moth-like baby birds and a significantly larger moth-like creature flapping its wings. Unseen by the creature, Rob observed from the bushes nearby. However, his attention was drawn to a repugnant pile of bones, feathers, and excrement nearby. Suddenly, a piercing scream from the sky shattered the silence, followed by crashing noises and a deafening thud. The atmosphere grew tense as Rob and the Mothman both remained motionless. Soon, a fearsome female Mothman appeared, dragging a lifeless human body and tending to the nest. Rob watched in terror as the creature settled down to sleep, eventually stirring the unconscious body on the bone pile. To his astonishment, the individual woke, displaying a bizarre appearance and attire suggestive of involvement in unconventional activities. With the female Mothman asleep and the peculiar individual staggering away, Rob seized the opportunity to retreat. He cautiously descended the mountain, only to witness the male Mothman atop a railroad signal tower, performing a peculiar and odorous act before flying off to the night sky. Fleeing to his car, Rob hastily departed from the scene, locking the doors and putting distance between himself and the surreal encounter. That is a crazy story. I don't know. It's weird with these stories. I don't know if Mothman is real. It's possible. I think anything is possible. This is really extreme. If this is real and there was a nest of Mothmen and they had captured a person and brought it to the nest, that is very strange. That's one of the weirdest encounters I've read. So the next one is by Ben. Despite his Australian background and English language struggles, he found himself in a peculiar encounter in May 2017 during his visit to the United States, staying with his aunt in Amesville, Ohio. Venturing into the scenic forest of the area on the fourth day of his stay, Ben encountered an odd odor of both rotting animals and heated chocolate, an unusual combination that puzzled him. Fearing the presence of bears, despite assurances to the contrary, Ben cautiously sought refuge behind rocks upon hearing the crackling of branches nearby. Peering from his hiding spot, Ben beheld a towering figure, initially resembling a bear due to its size, but emitting noises akin to the rush of air from a colossal fan, a sensation difficult to articulate due to language barriers. As the intermittent flapping sounds ceased, Ben emerged from concealment, only to hear them once more, prompting him to seek shelter behind a nearby tree. This time, he caught sight of the being, standing meters away, resembling a tall, furry figure wearing what seemed like a cape or perhaps wings, with antennas protruding from its head and curious night vision goggles, despite the daytime setting. The creature swiftly vanished after a brief appearance, leaving Ben bewildered. Upon recounting his experience to his aunt, he humorously suggested it resembled the Mothman, a legendary figure in local lore. Only recently did Ben recall the incident and investigate further, discovering striking resemblances between his encounter and the descriptions of the Mothman. Perplexed by the encounter's peculiarities, Ben seeks validation and understanding from others who may have encountered similar phenomena. So this Mothman looks a lot like the painting, except without the goggles. The night vision goggles is very weird. I wonder if he was wearing night vision goggles or his eyes just looked like night vision goggles. So this next encounter, a resident of Illinois who calls himself JJ found himself compelled to share an eerie encounter he experienced with the years of service at O'Hare Airport under his belt. JJ's duties often involved patrolling the airport's perimeter. On the night of December 3rd, 2019, JJ was en route to one of the airport cargo hubs situated on Express Center Drive. Approaching the creek near Montrose Ave, he noticed a figure standing in the creek bed. Assuming it was possibly a lost trucker, JJ halted his vehicle, intending to offer assistance. However, when the figure turned towards him, JJ was taken aback by the sight of two glaring red eyes. The figure then unfurled a pair of wings and swiftly vanished into the night sky, leaving JJ bewildered and shaken. Struggling to reconcile the experience with his rational mindset, JJ grapples with whether to report the incident or maintain silence to safeguard his reputation and future retirement. So JJ doesn't know if he should say his real name because of his job. So, yeah, I don't blame him. A lot of people wouldn't believe him and might think he's crazy. Oh. JJ's story continues. In a separate incident, reported in Pacific MO, what state is MO? Is that Montana? So MO is Missouri. So JJ and his son encountered a colossal flying creature on multiple occasions. The creature resembling a large adult human with a brownish gray hue. It trailed their vehicle in a circular pattern. Despite their disbelief, JJ and his son found themselves wide awake in a hotel, miles away from the initial sighting location, hopeful for any further reports to corroborate their experience. So JJ had two Mothman encounters. So this next one is interesting. It's being reported from Poland. This person calls themselves D, and they're retelling an intriguing incident that took place in April 2008 involving a friend of hers, a woman we will call Miss Izzy, who is from northern Poland. During a trip to the Born Solanowo area. So, Miss Izzy found herself exploring the ruins of a local military base around 1 to 2 p.m. Suddenly she felt an odd sensation, but pressed on. It was then that she spotted a semi-transparent entity hovering in midair, resembling a misty figure of a man outlined by a whitish contour. Paralyzed with fear, Miss Izzy watched as the being hovered just a few meters above her, its arms outstretched as if preparing for flight. Eventually, she mustered the courage to retreat to her nearby car. As she made her way back, Miss Izzy noticed the being following her, swiftly disappearing into the nearby woods. Alarmed, she promptly urged her husband to leave the area and recounted the bizarre encounter to him 2 days later. Describing the being as a male-like in appearance, Miss Izzy noted its solid and massive shape, akin to that of a tall man, moving silently and smoothly. She described it as misty with a distinct outline. Though the observation lasted only a few minutes, Miss Izzy couldn't recall the exact duration, possibly influenced by her physical state at the time, feeling weak and experiencing a temporary paralysis. She was unable to call out to her husband. However, these sensations dissipated once the being vanished into the woods. Despite being an open-minded individual, Miss Izzy remains shaken by the encounter and has no intention of returning to the site, despite having visited it frequently with her husband in the past. So that is interesting because it happened in Poland. Mothman is everywhere. Reporting from Huntington, West Virginia, Nancy, a divorced mother of two boys, aged 15 and 12, recounts an unsettling incident that occurred on March 2nd. Traveling south on Route 2, Ohio River Road, just outside of Huntington near Cox Landing Road, around 8:30 p.m., they were on their way back home after visiting a coworker. About a mile past the intersection, Nancy noticed something flying from behind a house on the right side, resembling a huge butterfly illuminated by the light from the side of the house. As it flew towards the road, Nancy accelerated to avoid contact, but the entity circled around and flew just ahead of them, on the right side, its enormous wings resembling those of a butterfly, though it didn't flap them, appearing to glide. Feeling terrified, Nancy's boys became aware of it, prompting her to accelerate further. After approximately 20 seconds, the entity suddenly shot up into the air and vanished. Nancy notes that they were under a severe storm and flash flood watch that evening, with high wind gusts and hail, along with tornadoes southwest of them in Kentucky. Upon reaching home, they discussed the encounter. Nancy's oldest son described it as resembling a person dressed in black, a black shiny suit, while her youngest son felt a sense of impending danger. Nancy's description aligns closely with her oldest son's, noting massive and broad wings, possibly twice the size of the body, with a faint orange glow from the head area, but no discernible features. After recounting the incident to a friend, Nancy learned about Mothman sightings in the area, prompting her to seek more information. While some drawings online resembled what she saw, they didn't match the wing size. Curious for an explanation, Nancy reaches out for further insights, expressing skepticism about the Mothman stories, but seeking clarity nonetheless. So those are the stories, the supposed encounters of Mothman. And I'm going to also talk about how Mothman is seen across the world. He's not only seen in West Virginia. Just like we heard the one lady was from Poland who saw Mothman, or what she thinks was Mothman. So Mothman is often seen before a disaster. So many people think he may be causing the disaster, or maybe warning about it, the impending doom, warning about what's going to happen. So in the days preceding the Chernobyl disaster in 1986, employees at the nuclear power plant claimed to have seen a horrifying humanoid with enormous wings, a black headless body, and red glowing eyes. Ominously known as the Blackbird of Chernobyl, witnessing this creature reportedly led to terrifying dreams and ominous phone calls for those unlikely enough to encounter it. Some believe it to be a variation of the mythical Mothman. Those appearances are often linked whose appearances are often linked to impending catastrophes. Similarly, in Freiburg, Germany, in 1978, a group of miners encountered a headless creature with glowing red eyes on its chest, which they initially mistook for a man wearing a trench coat. The creature emitted a spine-tingling screech before the mine collapsed, potentially saving the miners. They dubbed it the Freiburg Shrieker and speculated that it may have been a form of Mothman. So in that case, Mothman saved them. In La Junta, Mexico, in 2008, residents reported sightings of a large, hairy, red-eyed creature just before the swine flu outbreak hit the region. Witnesses were filled with terror upon hearing its screeches, and local authorities attempted to track it down, to no avail. Additionally, sightings of a black-winged creature near the Twin Towers in the days leading up to the September 11th, 2001 terrorist attacks raised eyebrows. Witnesses claimed to see the creature flying parallel to the plane during the attack, and those who reported sightings allegedly encountered men in black afterward, warning them to keep quiet. In southeast China in early January 1926, reports of sightings of a figure resembling Mothman flooded the region, just before a devastating flood struck nearby farming villages, resulting in thousands of deaths. Similarly, in Japan in March 2011, reports of Mothman sightings coincided with the devastating tsunami that battered the coastal Tohoku region and the subsequent nuclear meltdown at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. So it's interesting how Mothman is seen before a disaster. These are the ones that I found online. Mothman sightings are continuing to this day. People are still seeing what they think might be Mothman. So thank you guys for listening and watching. Let me know if there is a painting of a cryptid or creature that you would like me to do, and read stories to while painting. Before this one I did what did I do? I did Bigfoot. Before this one I did Bigfoot, and the next one is probably going to be Black-Eyed Kids. I'm working on the Black-Eyed Kids painting now. It looks really cool, and there's a lot of really creepy Black-Eyed Kids encounters that I'm going to read. So thank you very much for watching, and let me know if you like these videos, and I will see you next time.